And first up this week is going to be Ben's Damn Adventure, The Prince Has No Pants, written by Salty Waters. It is 267 pages, $3.99. It's not available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. A comedy. All life on Earth has been stolen away by the system, transported to another world at the behest of a distant galactic empire who lived in terror of humanity's potential. Ben was a normal, slightly above average man and had been about to go on his first real vacation of his adult life. Now he must contend with danger and mystery in a world of monsters, magic, and treasure, armed with nothing but his wits and the special item given to him by the system. This is his adventure. Welcome to the world. Okay, I'll be honest, that novel description is a lot more serious than this story is. This is a pretty solid written story, whose reviewers and readers seem to either really like this or really dislike it. And there's like some really vocal like, oh, I'm 1 star in this. I think this is the worst thing in the world. And other reviewers like, I love this. This is amazing. And I'm a little bit in the middle, but I still really enjoyed it. I can understand the divide because much of the story's, I think, entertainment value or pleasure relies on the sense of humor of the author. And if the sense of humor lands with you, I think you'll enjoy it. If it doesn't, and you read the sample and you're like, I don't like this, you're not going to like the rest of the story because the humor is very much the same. And there are a couple other issues that may be issues for people in that it's a slice of life story and it's a serial story that's continuing to be written online. And it definitely feels like that in the story. And if you're okay with those aspects of it, and you like the humor, I think you'll enjoy this. But if any of those things don't appeal to you, you probably won't, and that's okay. Not every story is written for every reader. I enjoyed it, even though I have some issues with it, which I'll get into overall, because I'm okay with all those things, and the humor didn't line with me. This is a super, again, very slice of life story, and it is a serial, and it definitely feels like it. There's a vague plot, I guess, about humanity escaping the dimension that they've all been sent to. But it mostly focuses on the main character and his sometimes crazy and weird adventures, figuring out the rules, fighting monsters, and a little dungeon diving, and some rather odd interactions with the beings that live in this dimension. This is overall a transported to an RPG world story where everyone on Earth is sent to a new dimension. Now, there's a huge, long, expensive setup for this. Like the first 15% is told from the perspective of not the main character, of this intergalactic government entity where the emperor, or I forget what it's called, is coming into power, and he's having a conversation with the last emperor who's like, we exist to keep humanity in check and to make sure they don't spread their crazy biological hazard adaptive species. And it goes on for like really 15%, like exactly how detrimental it would be for humanity to spread and how adaptable they are and how they have acid in their stomachs and biological weapons in there that help them digest their food, and they can eat anything basically as omnivores. And it goes on, and it's meant to be humorous and a little sarcastic and snarky, and for me it came off very entertaining. And I didn't mind. And I personally don't generally like these long setups. But because of just like the sense of humor and how it's like, oh, that is true about humans, and that gets an international universal scale that might be like, well, we're the predators of the universe, kind of thing. I thought it was funny. And so I didn't mind the exposition, but I can see how a lot of other readers would. Like they would want to get to the RPGs when that stuff doesn't really happen until like you're very much, like 50% of the story. So after that long introduction, then there's like another 30% of the story where the main character is doing character creation, or like this really long introduction to like the various locations he's not going to. And this weird bit where he's just floating in the ocean because that's where he ended up dropping into, and trying to survive there and live and get a hold of his powers and having a shark friend. But like any water dungeon, it kind of goes on too long. And if it wasn't for, again, the sense of humor and the dialogue between the main character and his shark friend, it would probably be boring. But the snarky dialogue and the humor just kind of worked for him. And if I was able to kind of, even though I was a little like, I'm like, this is probably going on too long, kind of push through it. And again, this is where like that serial format comes in, where like the author's just plugging along, writing chapters, like, okay, I think this week we're going to go to a water planet and we'll see how, maybe I'm watching Waterworld. Okay, let's see how this works out. And it kind of goes on for a little bit long, but still okay enough to go through it. But again, I can absolutely see other readers not sticking around. After the 50% mark is where it kind of got more interesting for me on a liturgy level, because that's when the RPG mechanics are introduced. That's when people, the main character, gets levels and classes and races, and there's a lot of like race changing and twists, and you're not really sure what's going to happen next, and there are some decent twists in here, and you get the game stuff that reminds you it's an RPG system, and the RPG system in the story isn't like super heavy. Like it's there and it exists, and from the very get-go you know that a system exists, so it's not like it's not existing at all before this point, but you're not seeing levels, you're not seeing those skill increase notifications for the most part. And instead, the game system is really handled the same, similarly to how it is in the Wandering Inn, where people have classes that they essentially choose, and maybe they have special abilities, but they're increasing their levels only when they're doing things related to those classes. And there's no real clear, defined XP in this particular story, just like there is in the Wandering Inn. Instead, you get major events increasing those levels and getting abilities and powers. So that's how the RPG system is formally, but there are also notifications that show, yes, this is an RPG world. It's not hidden away that much. Overall, the story and doesn't really feel to begin, doesn't really feel like it's liturgy until about the halfway point. Maybe before that, in the beginning, the story feels a little more like it's light gamelit. But again, the humor and the dialogue were just interesting enough to keep me reading until it was actually a liturgy, and that it was more entertaining for me. When you get to more action and adventure and exploring and digitizing stuff. And again, I think you'll enjoy this if you're okay with serial stories, if you're okay with maybe not a ton of action, or in the beginning half of the story, or feeling a little lighter the game mechanics, but still enjoying the humor as it comes up in the story. I kind of said that if the humor isn't landing for you in the sample that you read, you're probably not going to like the rest of the story. But if it does land, please continue on, give it a shot. For me, I had an time with it. Give it a score of 7.4 out of 10. I had a few issues where it's like, oh, you're listening to me a little bit with a longer setup, and the water scene, which again could have been summarized or shortened down a lot. So it's not going to get, it's still getting a decent score, a little bit under middle average of good for me. So it's a 7.4 out of 10. That's Ben's Damn Adventure, The Prince Has No Pants, with a score of, again, 7.4 out of 10.